was first reported missing, the search was intense.
That would be the happiest thing in the world to me right now is to hold my baby.
We found an 18-year-old young woman with the same date of birth, but a different name.
Well, welcome and thank you for keeping us company here on a Saturday. I'm Christy Paul.
I'm Victor Blackwell. Good morning to you. Less than a week to go before President-elect Donald Trump takes the oath of office in Washington. Today, immigration activists around the country will be rallying in the nation's capital. Now, this happens as Donald Trump goes back and forth on Russia, telling the Wall Street Journal now that he's open to lifting sanctions on the country, despite saying just on Wednesday that he thinks Russia is behind the cyber attack.
In the meantime, the Democrats came down hard on FBI Director James Comey, confronting him behind closed doors about those Russia hackings. On the other side of the aisle, the Republicans are seeming to take the hatchet to Obamacare. House Republicans voting and approving the process to begin repealing the Affordable Care Act. CNN's Jessica Schneider live in front of Trump Tower now for us.
Jessica, Donald Trump's comments on Russia, what does this mean as he prepares to take the oath, as he starts to build this new relationship between the U.S. and Russia?
Well, you know, Victor, Donald Trump has repeatedly expressed his willingness to engage with Russia, and he specifically talked about it in that hour-long interview with the Wall Street Journal last night, saying that he is prepared to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin after he is sworn into office, that happening in just less than a week. Donald Trump also talking about the possibility of rolling back those sanctions against Russia. He said that he probably would let those sanctions stand for a little bit of time, but then they could potentially be eliminated. Donald Trump specifically telling the Wall Street Journal this, saying if you get along and if Russia is really helping us, why would anybody have sanctions if somebody's doing some really great things? Donald Trump, of course, talking about the fact that he potentially hopes to work with Russia when it comes to eliminating terrorism, fighting ISIS, and perhaps working towards some other goals that the U.S. and the Russia maybe share. But of course, this could put Donald Trump once again at odds with congressional Republicans. Particularly, congressional leaders have expressed the fact that they want a hardline stance on Russia after, in particular, the U.S. intelligence community has concluded that Russia was in fact behind those hacks during the election season that targeted the Democratic National Committee, as well as Hillary Clinton's campaign chair, John Podesta, and his emails. So a lot of questions still lingering, but yes, Donald Trump now implying that he could in fact roll back those sanctions that were implemented by President Obama at the end of December. Victor and Christy.
All right, Jessica, what are we hearing from the Trump transition team about the communications between Trump's incoming National Security Advisor, General Michael Flynn, and the U.S., the Russia ambassador to the U.S.? What are we learning about that?
Well, a lot of questions had been swirling over the past few days. The Trump transition team addressing it head on yesterday, saying that, yes, in fact, Michael Flynn had been in touch with the Russian ambassador to Russia on several occasions, talking initially about when the Russian ambassador to Turkey was shot, of course, several weeks ago, and then continuing that communication in a text on Christmas, both of them wishing each other Merry Christmas. But the one that is raising eyebrows happening on December 29th, a phone call between the Russian ambassador as well as retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. The Trump transition team saying that that phone call was merely to begin arranging a meeting or a phone call between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, but some are expressing concerns. But of course, on December 29th, that is the same exact day that President Obama did put in place those sanctions against Russia, expelling those 35 Russian diplomats. And of course, there's that centuries-old act, the Logan Act, that does prohibit U.S. citizens from interfering in a dispute or controversy that the U.S. government hasn't explicitly approved. So there are some questions, but the Trump team saying definitively that Michael Flynn only talked with the Russian ambassador to discuss this phone call that could happen sometime after Donald Trump is inaugurated. Victor and Christy.
All right, Jessica Schneider outside of Trump Tower. Thanks so much.
I want to bring in CNN senior political analyst